have an example of a 10-year-old, okay, who had extreme night just angst, didn't like to sleep alone, likes the lights on, doesn't like the dark, almost fearful of nighttime. And we just go through kind of those scenarios.
Yeah.
And so we have
hadn't slept by herself or in her own bed for 8 years.
Yeah.
And we fixed that, and not a problem since, in 2 days' time.
In 2 days. So
yeah,
really exciting. And with that, think about that for a family, from a family's perspective. You know, stay in your bed, honey. You're 10 years old. Mom, I don't want to, right? I don't want to stay alone.
Yeah.
Can I just stay with you? Can I just, and think about mom's quality of rest. Okay, how did that improve after those 2 nights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
Phenomenal.
And her self-esteem.
Correct.
Was huge.
Yeah.
So,
very neat. So
pretty amazing.
we actually have an example of that as well.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. And we have a lot of examples of that. It's not just isolated to one anecdotal type of a case. Consistently we'll find that with the children. And it's very common in children. A lot of time it goes unrecognized, and then when we recognize it, it's not just dad's having to say, get back to bed, and finally saying, Mom, take this kid to the doctor, and the doctor saying, well, let's give him this prescription or this prescription to see if we can tone him down. If we can actually restore function and optimize this normal function, we start to see a change. Well, let me just tell you then, in our office, what we found consistently that helps with the person with the elevated pulse, okay, this rapid heart rate. We actually use a product from Standard Process. It's called MinChecks, not Rice Checks, not Corn Checks, even though they're gluten-free, right?
Right.
But MinChecks, and MinChecks, the Standard Process product, is really nothing more than some simple trace vitamin minerals, okay? It's very, very simple. Let me actually read you the ingredients, okay? It is calcium, niacin, vitamin B6, and just a bit of iodine. Okay? Now, I usually don't recommend iodine with people with autoimmunity and the thyroid, but with the anxiety, I found that this formula works very, very well. And it's that simple. And consistently, we've found people with elevated heart rates that will calm them down. I'll actually usually give between 4 and 6 capsules every 30 minutes if they're in that real racing, but usually within a 30-minute period of 2 dosings, it'll calm right down. So that's one that we use consistently. The other one that we use is by Dr. Karazian, Gabatone Active, and I'll share with you the ingredients from Gabatone as well, because this one really is essential because of its ability to increase that GI constituent and the precursors, then the builders of Gabatone. So we're looking at, again, vitamin B6, magnesium, zinc and manganese, L-taurine, valerian root, which a lot of you have used for trying to get to sleep and calm that anxiety, passion flower, L-theanine, and lithium. Well, that's what we even talked about with our severe anxiety. But that actually is a builder of Gabatone, precursors. Okay? And I think for those children that are too small to take the capsule, there's actually one called Gala Flow, which is a spray, and we'll use that as well. And that's also a product distributed by Apex, and I'm really happy with that product. Especially for our children that have the anxiety associated with the autism and the inability then to really relate socially, and they get the social anxieties in school or in their church settings or scouting, Boy Scout settings, or wherever. The Gala Flow is really easy for them to use because it's just a spray, and so we don't have to try to force them to taking the capsule. So just some basic information there. Any other questions about anxiety this evening? You know, it's one of those topics that we can just say, here it is, and there you go.
Is anxiety brought on by moving?
There are a lot of things that can create anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety the last 2 days.
Yeah.
What about the passing it along? Like, I don't mind saying I was diagnosed with OCD at 15, and I'm fine with it now. It doesn't affect my life, but I wonder about my kids. Is that something that passes through, or is that completely GI that caused my issue?
Okay, so here's the question. Is anxiety really a gene-related I think it's a gene expression per se, but more importantly, a GI related. Okay? So what do I generally pass on? I'll pass on an infection.
Okay,
Right.
so maybe very most likely related to the celiacs and the other.
Thank you.
Okay.
So celiac disease is very much related to a gene weakness or a gene fault, which causes then an impaired GI function,
Okay.
which causes then impaired neurotransmitter production.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's more consistently what I see. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, before we had genes, we had stress. Remember? Oh, you must have reflux because you have stress. Oh, you must be depressed because you have stress. Right? So for some of you, when you were growing up and you go to the doctor, oh, you must have high blood pressure because you have stress. Then we get into the 90s and everything is, you must have genes. You have genes, right? Breast cancer, you must have genes. Well, didn't we all wear genes? Right? But that's what it became, is this gene expression. Well, now we're actually starting to see it's not just genes. You're not just born with it, right? Of course we were born with this. That's what made me a guy, and this is what made you a girl. But in looking at this, it's not just the genes themselves, it's if the gene is expressed. So what causes the gene to be expressed? And that's actually what we'll be talking about quite a bit tomorrow in our discussion at the women's weekly luncheon, and that, or monthly luncheon, and that is nutrition for children. Okay, please.
So in actuality, it's an expression of genes, stress, and then you got the GI that is accumulation of the whole.
Right. So it's not just one, right? And who doesn't have stress? Stress can be as simple as I didn't eat lunch today. That's a stress. Stress can be I didn't sleep well last night. That's a stress, right? Stress can be something, again, as I was chasing my kids out the door to get to school this morning. That's a stress. So there are a lot of stressors that we see, and if we didn't have stress, just standing upright, gravity is a stress to us. If we didn't have gravity loading our bodies, we would quickly atrophy, and especially our brain. Okay? We've talked about that. Brain health is really indicated or indicative by posture. The more posturally unsound we become, the more impaired we become in the brain as well, right? So all of those things are consistent with that. So stressors actually, there's what we call eustress, good stressors, and then those that are called distress, right? So there's going to be a good stress and bad stress as well. So we have to try to outweigh these, create the good stress, and see the good stress that actually helps us to heal. Okay? Any other questions this evening?
Is there ways to increase your GABA without medication that you can do on a daily basis? That people can do?
The food.
Yeah.
Kids.
So again, when we looked at the healthy GI system, probiotics, we want to really have the health of the GI system will give us that. Okay, so again, we talked about briefly some of the fermented foods, and there's some, I don't know if we got that recipe on the online, did we, for the probiotic rich fermented foods? We're going to do that, right? Okay, so that one will be on there. So we'll actually have a recipe for some fermented foods online, including some fermented yogurts that are easy to prepare, and then also like a sauerkraut. I don't remember how they said it. It was a Spanish name, but I'm not that familiar with the word. It was new to me. But it tastes great. So, okay? So yes. Because again, the healthier the GI system, the better off the body. And again, we'll talk